Modern royal weddings are global spectacles. We see them as fairy tales come to life, watched by billions and analyzed down to the last detail. But what if the most important royal wedding of an era wasn't a fairy tale at all, but a desperate gamble? This is the story of how Queen Victoria, the formidable matriarch of Europe, tried to tame her wild playboy son with a beautiful princess who had charm to spare, but not much money. It was a calculated move, a strategic alliance meant to secure the future of the British monarchy. This union, born of crisis and control, would either save the dynasty or expose it to ruin. It was a wedding that brought together a philandering heir and a captivating foreign princess, and in doing so, it would come to define an era, set new standards for royal life, and reshape the public's relationship with the crown forever. In the mid-19th century, the British monarchy had a serious character crisis, and it was embodied in one man, Prince Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales, known to his family as Bertie. He was the heir to the most powerful throne on earth. But his parents, Queen Victoria and the deeply serious Prince Albert, looked at him with a mix of despair and dread. This was not the heir they had so carefully planned for. They envisioned a successor who was scholarly, disciplined, and morally flawless, basically a copy of Prince Albert himself. Bertie was none of those things. He was charming, social, and seemed to have a physical allergy to his rigorous education. He much preferred parties, sports, and the company of glamorous women to the boring duties of statecraft. The Bertie problem exploded in 1861. While he was stationed with the army in Ireland, his fellow officers thought it would be a great joke to smuggle an actress named Nellie Clifton into his quarters. The affair was brief, but the fallout was catastrophic. Word inevitably got back to his horrified parents at Windsor Castle. For Prince Albert, a man obsessed with moral purity and the dignity of the monarchy, his son's behavior wasn't just a youthful mistake. It was a stain on the family's honor and a direct threat to the very institution he'd worked so hard to reform. In a state of deep distress, the prince consort traveled to Cambridge to confront his son. He walked with Bertie in the rain, delivering a stern lecture on duty, responsibility, and moral failure. It was the last time they ever spoke. Shortly after returning to Windsor, Prince Albert, who was already unwell, succumbed to what was diagnosed as typhoid fever. He died on December 14, 1861. Queen Victoria was devastated, inconsolable. And in her profound grief, her sorrow curdled into a bitter, unshakable resentment aimed squarely at her own son. She blamed Bertie and his grubby little affair for her husband's death. "I never can or shall look at him without a shudder," she wrote to her eldest daughter. The death of Prince Albert plunged the court into a deep, oppressive mourning that would last for decades. But it also made the Bertie problem an urgent matter of state. Victoria retreated from public view, but she was more determined than ever to carry out her late husband's last great project, finding a suitable wife for the Prince of Wales. A marriage wasn't just a good idea anymore. It was an absolute necessity. It was seen as the only way to control Bertie's behavior, stabilize his life, and salvage the reputation of the future king. The search for a bride, which had started casually, now became a frantic, high-stakes mission. The mission? To save the heir from himself and secure the monarchy's future. The hunt for a bride for Bertie had technically started back in 1858, guided by the firm hands of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. With the help of their eldest daughter, Vicky, who was now the Crown Princess of Prussia, they drew up a list of suitable European princesses. The criteria were strict. She had to be Protestant, of royal blood, and have a personality that could somehow soothe and steady their wild son. But the politics of Europe made the whole thing a diplomatic minefield. The obvious choices were German princesses, which fit with the family's own German heritage. But there was a huge complication: the Schleswig-Holstein question, a tangled territorial dispute that pitted the German states, especially Prussia, against Denmark. It was Bertie's sister, Vicky, who suggested a name that was at first seen as a problem: Princess Alexandra of Denmark. She was the daughter of Prince Christian of Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Glücksburg, a man in line to become the King of Denmark. Alexandra's family was royal, but they were not wealthy by the standards of other European dynasties. Ironically, this worked in her favor. She wasn't a major political player, and her family didn't have the influence to push back against the British crown. When Vicky first put her forward, Alexandra was noted for her incredible beauty, easy charm, and gentle nature. So a meeting was carefully arranged. On September 24, 1861, in the German city of Speyer, Bertie was introduced to the 17-year-old Danish princess. He was immediately captivated. Even his father, Prince Albert, after reviewing the candidates, admitted that Alexandra was the only one to be chosen. Despite the political friction her Danish roots caused with the pro-German side of the family, Alexandra was seen as the best possible solution to the Bertie problem. She was beautiful enough to hold his attention, and her modest background suggested she'd be a grateful and compliant daughter-in-law. After Prince Albert's death, Queen Victoria clung to this plan as her husband's final wish. Getting Bertie married became her obsession. In her grief, she saw Alexandra not just as a bride for her son, but as the instrument of his salvation. This Danish princess was about to become the most important piece in a game of royal strategy and dynastic control. After that bleak winter of his father's death, Bertie was sent on an educational tour of the Middle East, a trip originally planned by Prince Albert to broaden his horizons and, more urgently, to get him away from his grieving mother. When he got back, the matchmaking plan moved into its final phase. On September 9, 1862, at the Royal Palace of Laeken in Belgium, Bertie met with Alexandra again. There, he formally proposed. By all accounts, he was genuinely taken with her, and for a moment, even Queen Victoria seemed pleased. The engagement was a rare piece of good news in a court that was still shrouded in black. Alexandra's journey to her new life began on March 7, 1863. She boarded the royal yacht, Victoria and Albert, and sailed for England. Her arrival in Gravesend, Kent, was a full-blown spectacle. The British public, who had been starved of any royal celebration during Victoria's seclusion, greeted their future princess with wild enthusiasm. Crowds poured into the streets to catch a glimpse of the beautiful young woman who had captured their prince's heart. The poet laureate, Alfred, Lord Tennyson, was even commissioned to write an ode for her, welcoming the Sea King's daughter from over the sea. From the moment she set foot on British soil, Alexandra, or Alex, as her family called her, was a sensation. Her beauty, her grace, and a slight, charming shyness captured the public's imagination. Newspapers printed endless stories about her journey and flattering portraits. She was the fairy tale princess the public had been waiting for. This immediate popularity was a huge asset. It showed that the marriage, whatever its strategic origins, was already a public relations home run. Alexandra had won over the people before she'd even said her vows. She wasn't just marrying the Prince of Wales, she was inheriting the affection of a nation. The wedding of Prince Albert Edward and Princess Alexandra of Denmark took place on March 10, 1863. But this was not the grand public celebration the nation was hoping for. Queen Victoria, still lost in her grief, decreed that the ceremony would be held not in London's magnificent Westminster Abbey, but in the more private St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. The press and public were disappointed, feeling shut out of the happy day. The guest list was cut down to mainly close family, which even upset the Danes, as only Alexandra's immediate relatives were invited. The mood on the day was bizarre. Outside the castle walls, people celebrated. Inside, the Queen's grief set the tone. She insisted that the ladies at the wedding wear a subdued dress code of gray, lilac, or mauve, to keep with the court mourning. But the most telling detail was the Queen's own role. Refusing to be part of the main procession, Victoria was escorted privately to the chapel. She didn't watch from the royal pew with her family. Instead, she observed the entire ceremony from high above in Catherine of Aragon's closet, a private gallery overlooking the altar. Dressed in her stark black widow's weeds, she was a lonely, spectral figure, a constant reminder of the loss that overshadowed the entire union. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Longley, conducted the ceremony. Alexandra, looking radiant in a gown of white silk and Honiton lace, was attended by 8 bridesmaids. Bertie waited at the altar. It was a significant moment in royal history, as it was the first wedding of a Prince of Wales ever to be held at St. George's Chapel. As Alexandra entered a Princess of Denmark and left as Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales, the union was sealed. A banquet followed, and the couple honeymooned at Osborne House, a home deeply tied to Victoria's happy memories with Prince Albert. The wedding was over. It had been a calculated, controlled event, designed more for a grieving queen than a happy couple. But a new beginning had arrived all the same. With Queen Victoria remaining in her self-imposed seclusion, a ghost in her own palaces, a power vacuum emerged, and into it stepped the new Prince and Princess of Wales. Bertie and Alex, as she was known to the family, established their own vibrant court at Marlborough House in London and their country estate Sandringham. Their lifestyle was a world away from the gloom of Victoria's court. They threw lavish parties and surrounded themselves with a glamorous high society group that became known as the Marlborough House set. While this glittering social life kept the monarchy in the headlines, it was Alexandra who truly secured its popularity. She had a natural grace and a genuine warmth that the public absolutely adored. She became a major fashion icon. Her style, from the high necklines she wore to cover a small scar, was copied by women across the country. After a severe bout of rheumatic fever left her with a slight limp, even that became a trend, known as the Alexandra limp. More importantly, she poured herself into charity work, lending her support to countless causes and endearing herself to the British people with her compassion. This public adoration was a stark contrast to her private life. The marriage hadn't cured Bertie, as Victoria had hoped. He continued his affairs throughout their marriage, and they were often open secrets. Yet Alexandra handled these infidelities with incredible public dignity. This stoicism did not go unnoticed. The public, who would often cheer for her while booing her husband, saw her as a wronged but graceful figure, which only made them love her more. In many ways, Alexandra became more popular than Bertie, and certainly more beloved than the absent queen. Together, they became the public face of the monarchy, bridging the gap between the withdrawn sovereign and her people. The marriage that was meant to control a playboy prince had instead created a new kind of royal power couple, whose influence was built not on political power, but on celebrity, style, and public affection. The story of the monarchy is full of strategic marriages and surprising legacies. If you want more tales of royal power plays and the personal lives behind the pomp, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell, and let us know in the comments. What other royal marriage do you think changed history? The wedding of Prince Albert and Princess Alexandra was much more than a simple ceremony. It was a strategic maneuver, born from a moment of deep crisis for the British monarchy. It was a queen's desperate attempt to control a wayward heir and a plan to secure a dynasty shaken by scandal and loss. Yet from this foundation of control, something unexpected blossomed. The marriage, while privately troubled, was a stunning public triumph. It introduced Alexandra, a princess who would become one of the most beloved royal figures in British history, holding the title of Princess of Wales longer than anyone, as of 2025. Her charm and grace, combined with Bertie's social nature, gave the monarchy a new, modern face during Victoria's long retreat from public life. They created a new kind of royal celebrity that kept the crown relevant and loved. This union, designed as a solution to a problem, ended up setting a new standard for the monarchy, proving that public perception could be just as powerful as political authority in sustaining the crown for a new century.